Hey, amazing viewers! Before we go into this riveting narrative, drop your location in the comments below. We love connecting with you all around the world. Also, if this is your first time here, press the subscribe button and join our incredible journey. Let's hit 10,000 subscribers this month together. Your support means everything. The last goodbye. The day I buried my daughter was the day I lost a piece of my soul. The sun had no warmth, the air had no life, and the world had turned into a dull, empty shell. The church bells rang with an eerie hollowness as I stood over the coffin, staring at the polished wood that now separated me from my baby girl forever. Emma, my little sunshine, my only child, gone. I couldn't accept it. A father is supposed to protect his child, to shield her from harm. But I had failed. Emma had always been the brightest light in any room she walked into. She was 7 years of pure laughter, dreams, and warmth. She wanted to be a dancer, twirling in the living room, giggling whenever she lost balance. She believed in fairies, in magic, in the idea that love could fix anything. But love hadn't saved her. The doctor said it was an accident, a fall down the stairs, but something felt wrong. Emma had always been careful, always cautious, and yet I found her lifeless at the bottom of the staircase, her tiny frame twisted, her wide, innocent eyes staring into nothingness. The police ruled it an accident. I didn't believe them. Grief and doubt became my only companions, and so, before saying my final goodbye, I did something no father should ever have to do. I hid a camera inside my daughter's coffin. It was a desperate act of a broken man, a whisper of madness in a mind drowning in sorrow. But the thought wouldn't let me go. What if something had happened to Emma that I didn't know about? What if I had been wrong to trust those who claimed to care? The camera was small, hidden inside the lining of the coffin. It would activate with motion, capturing anything that happened after the burial. A crazy idea, maybe, but grief makes you do things you never imagined. The burial was agonizing. Each handful of dirt that hit the coffin was another weight crushing my heart. Family and friends whispered condolences, but their voices blurred into meaningless noise. My world had ended the moment Emma took her last breath. That night, I sat alone in my house, staring at the baby photos on the wall. The house was silent, yet it felt full of echoes. Her laughter, her tiny footsteps, the way she'd call out, "Daddy, look," whenever she learned something new. The emptiness was suffocating. 2 days passed before I found the courage to check the camera footage. My hands shook as I connected it to my laptop. My rational mind told me there would be nothing but darkness, nothing but stillness. But the moment I pressed play, my entire world turned upside down, because there was movement. And then, a voice, a whisper, a sound that should have been impossible. "Daddy, help me." The whisper from the grave. When I first heard it, I thought I was losing my mind. Grief does strange things to people, warping reality, making the impossible seem real. But this wasn't just my mind playing tricks on me. The voice, Emma's voice, was there, in the darkness of my laptop screen. Faint, almost like a breath carried by the wind, but unmistakably her. "Daddy, help me." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I rewound the footage, my hands shaking. Was it some kind of interference? A technical glitch? Maybe my ears were deceiving me. I turned up the volume, listening intently. Silence. And then, a sound. A faint rustling, like movement. Something shifting in the darkness of the coffin. My heart pounded against my ribs, a raw, unrelenting terror gripping me. This couldn't be happening. I stared at the screen, frozen, watching the recorded darkness stretch on. For minutes, there was nothing. Just silence, just stillness. Then, suddenly, a shadow. I lurched back in my chair, bile rising in my throat. Something moved. I couldn't see clearly. It was just a flicker, barely a distortion against the darkness. But it was there. A shift, a presence. I paused the video and rubbed my eyes, trying to breathe. Maybe it was a bug inside the coffin. Maybe it was a reflection or a glitch in the camera. But my gut told me otherwise. A part of me, a logical, rational part, screamed that it was impossible. Emma was gone. I had seen her body, touched her cold skin, whispered my last words to her before they sealed the coffin shut. And yet, I hit play again. This time, I focused, forcing myself to listen, to look past my fear, to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before me. The rustling sound came again, followed by what could only be described as a scratching noise, like nails against wood. No, no, no. I pushed back from the desk, my chest tightening. My hands trembled so violently that the mouth slipped from my grip. This isn't real. This can't be real. But the footage was still playing. And then, it happened. A sharp, sudden thud. Loud. Desperate. Like something hitting the inside of the coffin. I screamed, slamming the laptop shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. What the hell was I hearing? I stumbled to my feet, pacing, my mind racing. There had to be a logical explanation. There had to be. But what if there wasn't? What if I had buried my daughter alive? The thought sent a violent shudder through me. No, that was impossible. The doctors had declared her dead. There had been no pulse, no breath. She had been gone. And yet, I swallowed hard and forced myself to open the laptop again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating, before I clicked on the next segment of footage. This time, the video showed something different. At first, it was just the same darkness, the same eerie silence. But then, something flickered. Light, dim, bluish light. It illuminated the inside of the coffin just enough for me to see. A handprint. Small, pressed against the lid from the inside. Emma's handprint. The breath left my lungs in a choked sob. And then suddenly, the screen cut to static. I jolted backward, my pulse hammering, my mind a whirlwind of horror. What was happening? Was this some kind of cruel joke? No, because Emma's whisper still echoed in my head. Daddy, help me. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my car keys and ran toward the cemetery, toward my daughter's grave, toward the impossible, digging up the truth. I don't remember the drive to the cemetery. My mind was a blur of white noise, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned pale. The world outside my windshield felt unreal, too slow, too distant. Streetlights flashed by like ghostly echoes, and my breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. All I knew, all I cared about, was getting to Emma's grave. What if she was still alive? What if I had buried her breathing? The thought sent a violent shudder through me. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. And yet, I had heard her voice. I had seen her handprint. The cemetery loomed ahead, its iron gates casting long shadows under the dim glow of the street lamps. I swerved into the parking lot, barely bothering to turn off the engine before stumbling out of the car. My heart pounded against my ribs as I ran toward her grave, the uneven ground causing me to stumble more than once. The air was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and whispers something is wrong. Emma's grave was near the far end, a modest white headstone barely visible in the darkness. My breath came in short gasps as I reached it, falling to my knees, my hands trembling against the freshly packed dirt. She was down there. She was down there. I didn't stop to think, didn't stop to breathe. I started digging. At first it was just my hands, clawing at the dirt like a madman. My fingers bled, but I didn't care. The damp earth wedged beneath my nails, staining my skin, clinging to my clothes. I had to reach her. I had to know. I wasn't strong enough. The dirt was too heavy, too packed. I needed something, anything. My eyes darted around, searching wildly, until they landed on a nearby maintenance shed, a shovel. I needed a shovel. I sprinted toward the shed, my breath ragged, my pulse thundering in my ears. The door was locked. I didn't care. I grabbed a rock from the ground and smashed the rusty padlock until it cracked open, the door creaking ominously as I yanked it wide. My hands fumbled through the darkness until I found what I needed. A shovel. I ran back to the grave, fell to my knees, and started digging again. Harder. Faster. Dirt flew in all directions, my muscles screaming in protest, but I refused to stop. The first time my shovel hit something solid, I nearly choked on my own breath. The coffin. My hands shook violently as I wiped the sweat and dirt from my forehead. I dropped the shovel and started brushing the remaining soil away with my hands until the wooden lid was fully exposed. I hesitated, because now, I had to open it, and I wasn't ready for what I might find. What if she was there, but unchanged? What if this was all in my head? What if the voice, the handprint, the sounds, had all been grief-induced insanity? Or what if? A faint thud. I gasped, my entire body freezing in place. It came from inside. Thud. Soft. Faint. But unmistakable. The world tilted. The breath in my lungs turned to ice. Oh God. I scrambled for the coffin's latch, my fingers fumbling wildly, caked in dirt and sweat. I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except getting it open. I pried it loose, forcing the lid up, my heart hammering, my pulse roaring in my ears. And then, I saw her, Emma, lying there, her little hands curled into fists, her dress still clean, still white, too white. But her eyes were open, and she was staring at me. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Because those weren't Emma's eyes. Not anymore. They were darker, hollow, like she had seen something in the dark, something I couldn't understand. I let out a strangled gasp, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. And then, her lips moved. But the voice that came out wasn't hers. Daddy, why did you leave me? A voice that wasn't hers. I forgot how to breathe. The words that left her lips were not Emma's, not my daughter's. Daddy, why did you leave me? It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Her voice had always been warm, sweet, full of life. But now, it was something else entirely. It was layered, as if something else was speaking through her. My body locked in place, every muscle frozen in raw, paralyzing terror. Emma's face was pale. Too pale. Her little hands were still curled into fists, her small body impossibly still. But her eyes, they weren't hers anymore. They were black, the whites barely visible, as if something inside her had changed. As if she had seen something in the darkness that no one should ever see. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, strangled by fear. I reached out, my fingers trembling, hovering inches from her hand. Was this real? Was I dreaming? And then she moved. Her little fingers twitched. Then her lips parted again. And what came out made my blood turn to ice. It's so dark, Daddy. It's so cold. Why didn't you come sooner? I stumbled back, falling onto the damp dirt, my hands gripping the earth as the world spun around me. I wanted to believe I was hallucinating, that this was some twisted nightmare. But the scent of freshly dug soil was real. The night air stung my skin. And my daughter, my buried daughter, was speaking. My stomach twisted violently. This wasn't right. This wasn't possible. And yet, I had heard the voice in the video. I had seen the handprint. I had dug up my daughter's grave. And now she was staring at me. A shudder ran through my body. Was she alive? Had she somehow survived? Had I buried her breathing? I leaned forward, my hands shaking. Emma, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Sweetheart, can you hear me? Silence. For a moment, her body remained still, the eerie glow of the moon casting long shadows over her tiny frame. Then, her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. I screamed. Her fingers were cold. Too cold, like ice, like death. But her grip was impossibly strong. "Daddy," she whispered, but it wasn't her voice anymore. It was deeper, hollow, wrong. Something else was inside her. I struggled, trying to pull away, but her grip tightened, her nails digging into my skin. My heart was hammering so violently I thought it might burst. This wasn't Emma. This couldn't be Emma. She shouldn't have been able to move, to speak. And yet, she was holding me. Then she smiled, and something inside me snapped. I ripped my arm free, scrambling back in pure terror. The night around me felt suffocating, the shadows stretching, closing in. And Emma, or whatever was inside her, began to rise. I let out a strangled gasp as her small body moved unnaturally, stiffly, as if she was being pulled up by invisible strings. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave her. She was still my daughter, wasn't she? Tears blurred my vision. My mind screamed at me to flee, but my heart ached with something stronger. Guilt. I had buried her. I had left her alone in the dark. And now she was back. My lips trembled. "Emma, sweetheart, it's okay. I'm here now." She tilted her head. Then, slowly, her lips curled into a soft, almost sad smile, and she said the words that shattered my world. "You shouldn't have come, Daddy." My body went rigid. A whisper. Not from her. From behind me. Cold breath brushed against my neck, and a voice, low, hollow, inhuman, hissed into my ear. "She belongs to us now." The night swallowed my scream. Letting go of the darkness, a cold breath slithered against my neck, wrapping around my spine like a noose. "She belongs to us now." The whisper wasn't just behind me. It was inside me. I felt it slither through my veins, coil around my mind like a fog that suffocated all reason. My body was frozen, my breath ragged, my pulse erratic. Emma. She stood there, unmoving. Her small, delicate frame should have made her look fragile, but there was something unnatural about her posture. Too stiff, too deliberate, like she wasn't standing on her own. I knew then, with a deep, soul-wrenching certainty, this wasn't my daughter anymore. Something had taken her, something that had been waiting. The night air felt heavier, pressing down on me with an invisible force. The cemetery around us seemed darker now, the gravestones stretching taller, their shadows shifting as if they were watching. I forced myself to move. I reached for Emma, for whatever was left of her. She took a slow, unnatural step forward. And then she wept. Tears ran down her pale cheeks, the expression on her tiny face suddenly terrified. Her lips trembled, her small hands clenching into fists. "Daddy, I don't want to stay here," she whispered. My heart shattered. This was her, my baby girl. Somewhere inside that cold, motionless body, she was still fighting. But whatever had her, it wasn't letting go. I clenched my fists, feeling the earth beneath me, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I had come here in desperation, in sorrow, in madness. I had dug up my daughter's grave with my own hands. And now, I knew what I had to do. I had to let her go. Tears burned my eyes. No father should ever have to make this choice. But I knew, whatever had claimed her, whatever had pulled her into the darkness, it thrived on my pain. I was keeping her here. My grief was the chain that bound her to this nightmare. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking as I stepped forward. "Emma," I whispered, reaching out one last time. Her small hand trembled. And then, a shadow rose behind her. Tall, twisted, impossible. A figure of pure darkness with long, clawed fingers reaching down, pressing against her tiny shoulders. It had been hiding in the edges of my vision, lurking in the spaces where the light didn't touch. And now it was revealing itself. My body screamed at me to run, to tear her away, to fight. But I knew I couldn't fight this. Emma's lips parted, her voice fragile. "Daddy, please." My throat tightened. My baby girl. I knelt beside her grave, and I did the hardest thing a father could ever do. I closed my eyes, and I let go. "I love you, Emma." Her small, ice-cold fingers brushed against mine for the last time. Then, the wind howled. A sudden, violent gust of air knocked me backward, and a piercing, hollow scream shattered the silence of the cemetery. The sound wasn't just loud. It was inside my skull, reverberating through my bones. And then, silence. I gasped, my chest heaving, my hands shaking as I forced myself to look up. Emma was gone. Her coffin lay open, empty. The presence that had suffocated the air, gone. And in its place, nothing. Just the wind. Just the night. Just absence. Tears ran down my face as I slowly stood, my body weak, my soul hollow. I knew what had happened. I had freed her. She had been trapped, not in the coffin, but in my sorrow. I had held on too tightly, and something else had clung to that pain, feeding on it, keeping her here. But now, she was at peace. I turned and walked away, leaving behind an empty coffin, an empty grave, and a heart that would forever carry the weight of love and loss. As I reached my car, a gentle breeze brushed past me. And I swear, just for a moment, I heard her giggle. Soft, free, and then it was gone, just like my little girl. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you did, please consider liking the video and sharing it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.